Okay, we are live. Hi, this is William Ramsey. Welcome to William Ramsey Investigates. On today's show, I have a very special guest, returning guest. His name is James Day, D-A-Y, and he has just done some work on a new documentary. He calls it JFK, KKK, JFKKK, is it? The Ku Klux Klan and the killing of JFK. I'm going to bring up that documentary here in a second. We were talking in the pre-show about this. I was trying to confirm whether Clay Shaw, the guy Garrison, botched a trial, was a confirmed member of the Knight of Malta, and it kind of ties into some of his work on his documentary JFKKK, because a lot of these guys were either Maltese Knights or some kind of offshoot. I've done a lot of recent research on the Knights of Malta, if you've been listening to my show, but even during that research, there's stuff on the Maltese, these websites saying they're unaffiliated groups taking credit to be Knights of Malta that aren't Knights of Malta, that aren't accredited. And it kind of ties into the other shows that James and I have done. The first show that we did was his book, The Mad Bishops, The Hunt for Earl Anglin James and His Assassin Brethren. We did that back in February 2024. Then we did something about his documentary about David Ferry. I've done a number of shows about Ferry, and he had pictures and information on Ferry I'd never seen. So people can either watch his documentary or listen to our episode on David Ferry. And then we recently did, about 3-4 months ago, his recent book, The Fraud of Turin. And so this will be the 4th episode we've done. I have some slides. Some of these names I'm not familiar with. Somerset, if you've studied the JFK information, I've done about 25 episodes. Some of the names keep popping up that are familiar, like Clay Shaw, but who isn't in this. But I've also done a show about another character. I actually had the author on that James mentioned, and it's this book, Preacher Behind the White Hoods, a critical examination of William Branham and his message. And the author is John Andrew Collins, so you can look through my catalog with that one. But I didn't know a lot about some of these characters, and this isn't what James is looking into. I think is underemphasized in the JFK assassination, this kind of civil rights, white supremacy aspect to it, which you can talk more about. So James Day, welcome back to the show.
Yeah, great, William. Awesome. Thank you. And I didn't actually realize, although I thought I kept up with your show pretty good, but I didn't realize you had John Collins on. So that's great, because he was an integral part of the research. So I'll have to check it out. And even though I haven't heard it, I encourage other folks to check it out too.
Yeah, maybe that you can go into this background. There's a lot of connections and a lot of names I didn't know in this kind of white supremacy stuff. And one of the things that's interesting, I had Corey Hughes on, who knows a lot about JFK, has written a book on it. But he noticed a lot of these policemen on the day of the shooting are pictured, but they're walking around with badges and tags that are explicitly KKK. They are members of the Ku Klux Klan, walking around Dealey Plaza, pictured with things. So if you're in that group, you would know right off the bat, these guys are these are my brethren, secret brethren or whatever. But the outsiders would know. Like, I've seen pictures, a lot of pictures. I would have just gone, I thought that was a police badge. No, it's a KKK badge. So that was something that was going on in Texas around that time in 63, November 22nd, 63. And
absolutely. One of the names we'll be talking about, and one of the officers we're going to be talking about, have obviously a Dallas connection. So I'm a little confused, actually, because this information I can't believe it's hardly talked about, like you said in your show open. Willie Somerset was an FBI informant and a Miami police informant. He's well known because he's the one who made the recording of Joseph Miltier there on the right, talking, this is on November 9th, that there was a plan to have the president shot from a high-powered building, the motorcade passing, and that the unsuspecting fall guy would be quickly picked up. That's really about it. From when you hear, oh yeah, I heard that he's the guy that predicted, like he kind of knew about it or something, and then you never hear anything more. But Willie Somerset has a ton of information. Granted, he's a single source, so it's very hard to corroborate what he's saying. Okay, I get that. But the information that he gives you, you need to start looking into it. And when you do, a lot of pieces incredibly start falling into place. For instance, he called his source at one of the sources at the FBI the week of MLK's assassination, said Martin Luther King they're planning on shooting him this soon. And April 4th of that week, he's taken out in Memphis. So he knew a lot because he was a Klan insider, and he was within this right-wing hardcore milieu, this like paramilitary militia, white supremacist milieu. So when I refer to the Klan, yes, I am talking about card-carrying Klan members. But at the same time, I'm using the Klan as a way of like an umbrella to describe the whole right-wing milieu that these guys are part of. It's not, so I don't want to say, how people have this idea of like, well, the CIA did it, and et cetera. And so, you're a Klan guy then, right? Because you're saying the Klan did it. Well, the whole, I caution that because, there's a lot more complexity in terms of affiliations and everything like that. But for the most part, yeah, this was a very Klan, I believe, from what I'm piecing together here, a very Klan-based assault that was fomented by paramilitary white supremacists who had a bulwark of military personnel behind them. They all share this idea of not only white supremacy, but Christian identity theology, as you know, which is where William Branham and John Collins's research comes into. So before maybe we lose everybody, William, I thought maybe of going into Jack Ruby a little bit first, but before I do, I'll just toss it back to you if you wanted to add anything.
No, please go into Ruby. I just did a show about the murder of Lee Harvey Oswald. A guy by the name of Paul Abbott just put out a book. So that was, I think, yesterday or the day before. And it is interesting, it's kind of not talked about, but that's also an interesting thing because it involves the police. There's all these police picking up Oswald at the Texas Theater. There's J.D. Tippit, which you talk about. And then my knowledge of the KKK members is it's there. It's not like some, phantasm or mirage. It's real. So maybe please do talk about Ruby and go from there.
Because the evidence, a lot of it, of course, circumstantial, but we have the overwhelming evidence that they wanted Kennedy, and certainly, a kind of left-leaning liberalism, integration and desegregation, disarmament, all of these things that Kennedy's policies were promoting. It's all in a lot of these suspects. I mean, versus other areas of conspiracy that say so-and-so did it. Well, where's your evidence for it? Because this is just almost overwhelming closed book. So let's just focus. Well, first off, before we get into Ruby, I will say Willie Somerset there on the left said, per Joseph Miltier, this is the day. So Joseph Miltier, there's a very 90% chance he was in Dealey Plaza on the 22nd. Okay.
There's supposedly a picture of him in the crowd.
Correct.
That looks like him. Like my eyes, I can see this guy resembles him.
It's an Alkins photo as the motorcade's going by, and he's down the line there watching people. Somerset picked him up in Jacksonville, Florida, and they were driving up to South Carolina for a Klan meeting on the 23rd. So this is the day after. Here we are 62 years later. People have no idea what we're talking about. So this is the day after. He picks him up. They're driving up, and he's jubilant, because it worked. And Somerset's trying not to probe too much, but he's trying to, So, but in that discussion, he said there was J.D. Tippit, this officer, obviously supposedly shot by Lee Harvey Oswald, a guy called Theodore Jackman, and a guy Roy E. Davis. Per Miltier, those were the ones who did the killing in the kill zone on the 23rd. We'll unpack all of them because they may sound very foreign names. I mean, Tippit, you might be surprised to hear, but so I just want to put that out there. Now, the morning of the assassination, Jack Ruby's at the Dallas Morning News office. He's placing his ad, as he's known to do, for his, Carousel Club and everything like that. He's looking at through the morning newspaper, and there's the "Welcome, Mr. Kennedy" leaflet ad printed on the Dallas Morning News. This is Jack Ruby's actual copy. That's Jack Ruby's actual copy.
Wow. He did everything for that.
He cut it out. Yeah, he cut it out, and that's his. That's what they had on him when they got him. or it may have been in his car. But either way, he's looking at it and he's thinking, oh, this is actually what a nice thing to do. Welcome the president. He didn't realize, like, once he started reading it, how derogatory it was. He started to get a little, he was getting a little upset that he was taken by surprise. And then at the bottom, it says the American Fact-Finding Committee, Bernard Weissman, chairman. Now, Jack Ruby is a very proud Jew. I mean, obviously he was born, Jacob Rubenstein in Chicago. He sees that and it's like he's triggered, because not only did he think this was insulting towards John F. Kennedy, he thought this was insulting towards the Jewish people in general. So he's got this going on already in his mind, and then the assassination happens, and we know he's kind of there in terms of showing up at these various locations throughout the day. Obviously he's part of that midnight press conference when Oswald is speaking for just those couple of minutes. Ruby's part of the crowd. Well, he brought sandwiches to the Dallas PD, and he happened to be there when this interview with Oswald was happening. He thought that this reminded him of the wanted for treason leaflet that was being passed around Dallas the day before. So he saw that in his mind. He's thinking, okay, there's a correlation here. He becomes obsessed with this and the Welcome Mr. Kennedy ad throughout the day, especially after the assassination. It's kind of like when you're in school and you kind of know the answer and and they're not calling on you and no one else is getting it and you know what it is and they're just totally overlooking. I'm just projecting here, but Ruby kind of sensed that, and we know the John Birch Society was behind the sponsoring of the leaflet. So he goes to it's at 2 a.m. and he goes to the KLIF radio, where he knows everybody in Dallas, right? So he brings sandwiches not only to the Dallas PD, but he also brings sandwiches to the KLIF newsroom. And there's a buddy there, Russ Knight, and he tells Russ that he's pretty sure that Dallas radicals are behind the assassination. He tells Russ Knight that. That's at 2 a.m. Then at 4 a.m., he grabs two buddies, George Senator and Larry Crawford, and they want to they grab their Polaroid camera and they go to the Stemmons Freeway, where there's a billboard, a third sign now. And this is the Impeach Earl Warren billboard, which was populating not only in Dallas, but it was populating all over the country. Again, another John Birch reference in terms of sponsorship. That this was like a ploy from the John Birch Society to kind of get that going. But something's clicking in his mind. It's like the wanted for treason, welcome Mr. Kennedy. All this sounds just like the John Birch, the Impeach Earl Warren billboard. So they take a picture of it. And underneath that is box 1757. For more information, please write box 1757. They went to the local post office after that to try to find the boxes. He was able to locate the box for 1792. If you can go to the Welcome Mr. Kennedy, Bernard Weissman's name down there below it says P.O. Box 1792, Dallas 21.
Sure does.
Ruby's thinking the Impeach Earl Warren may have been the same box, but it's not. It's 1757, but it's at the same post office. Ruby was never able to figure out who that was in terms of who owned the box 1757. I found out who it was, and it's in this article, and it's owned by one of the three shooters named by Willie Somerset. His name is Roy E. Davis, who we'll get into in a second. There's a connection with if you can go, William, if you can go back to the wanted for treason.
Sure.
John Collins, you're the guy you interviewed, who, by the way, for folks to know, he's not really a JFK researcher guy. He came at it from being part of the cult of William Branham, right? So he kind of is coming in at totally without that kind of element to his research. But he writes in Preacher Behind the White Hoods that R.E. Davis, Roy E. Davis, supplied the printing equipment for the distribution of the Wanted for Treason leaflets. So Roy E. Davis is behind Wanted for Treason flyer, and he's behind the Impeach Earl Warren billboard. And I think Ruby was trying to, in his like gumshoe amateur journalist way, was trying to put all that together that weekend. And personally, I think he hyperventilated himself into pulling the trigger because he had this knowledge and he didn't know what to do with it. But now we can be completely certain that this character, Roy E. Davis, was behind putting this propaganda out, this anti-Kennedy propaganda out the weekend of the assassination, who just happens to be one of these names provided by Willie Somerset as to who did the shooting in Dealey Plaza.
Right. I mean, and there's weird things, like there's all kinds of stuff that went on. There were all these people impersonating Secret Service who were, some of them were right wingers too. Like
right.
Talking real far right wingers, not just
Edgar Eugene Bradley is one of them, a preacher from Southern California who was found to be, according to Deputy Sheriff Roger Craig, to be found impersonating a Secret Service agent in front of the Texas School Book Depository.
Right.
Bradley, this guy Bradley, is associated with Wesley Swift and William Potter Gale, two preachers within the Christian identity movement. That is, the real Jews are Anglo-Saxon whites, right? And it plays right into the idea of the civil rights movement and their passion against desegregation, against integration. So Bradley is connected to those two guys, which I think we'll get into, because to me, I will submit this now since I mentioned them. William Potter Gale was a lieutenant colonel in General MacArthur's staff. He was a member of the Sovereign Order of St. John of Jerusalem. And Wesley Swift, who was a very famous preacher who ran the Church of Jesus Christ Christian. I believe, I'm submitting this at this point. I mean, I still have to back it up, but I think that they were project managers on the assassination.
Of the whole assassination. Yeah. Do you think that Edgar Eugene Bradley was an authentic member of the Knights of Malta, like the real one, or was it the kind of traveling bishops kind of version? Were you able to confirm that? Because I know that I have this in there where there's like a legit, like this looks legit to me. Like it has the full name of the Sovereign Order of St. John of Jerusalem.
But it's not.
It's not. Okay.
It's not. This is the Shikshini Knights.
Okay. We talked about that before. Yeah.
Right. Who aren't legitimately the recognized by Rome Order of St. John, the Hospitallers of medieval times. This is a play on that. They'll tell you that they're real.
Right.
But for our purposes here, they play right into the protocols of the Elders of Zion, that there's no place in the U.S. for Aryans. Right. So in that respect, all of these, there are so many military folks from Willoughby down who were part of the General MacArthur staff during World War II. Potter Gale, who I just mentioned, is one of these guys as well. So I'll since we're talking about Malta, I have been wrapping my brain around who has been behind them. Has it been, are they a conduit for the FBI? Are they a conduit for another federal government intelligence organization? What exactly are they doing? But I reached out to the Grand Master of this particular Order of Malta. And it's totally playing on our confusion that we think that it's a total, it totally
looks legit to me. Like it's not, it's supposed to be Hospitaller. That's right. The original name. It's got to have
yes, but I contacted in Rome, the offices for the Order of St. John. That's considered to be the consistent one since the Crusades. And the lady was basically, here's the recognized titles, and these guys aren't recognized at all by the Vatican or any legitimate head of state. But so I contacted the Grand Master of this particular, the current Grand Master of this particular, I think he's a nurse in Florida, and so he got back to me, and his whole thing is about it. I couldn't really understand what he was saying, but it was like a paramilitary definition of what these guys are. And to me, they're no different than these paramilitary militias who crop up to support right-wing ideology. They're not necessarily part of a government entity, but we know currently how many of those things exist. Those right-wing militias. I think this is one of them, because you needed a paramilitary faction to pull off Dealey Plaza,
Right.
And these gentlemen, these Klan like-minded people fit right into this.
Right. It's a military operation. Even the killing of Tippit is almost like somebody who's a pro. It's not an accident. When somebody does 3 to the body and 1 to the head, it's like you're not going to make it. It's like.
So Tippit is killed outside in Oak Cliff, which is a kind of a giveaway. First off,
Let's see if I can get this map up here.
Tippit is killed in the area where Roy E. Davis is a resident of Dallas. This Roy E. Davis is a resident of Dallas, and he lives in the Oak Cliff area. So we're looking at it kind of right now. And my thinking is, let's just go along with what Somerset says. Could Tippit have been one of the shooters in Dealey Plaza? Well, maybe. And if he did, what was then his job? He's doing a lot of crazy things right after the shooting, right? So he's in Oak Cliff where he shouldn't be. Is he waiting for Lee Oswald? Is he trying to trap Lee Oswald? Is his job to kill Lee Harvey Oswald and to say and to put an end to any speculation as to who it might have been? By the way, it's the Dallas Magazine in 2013 reported that J.D. Tippit did off-duty work at the Texas Theater. Okay.
Right, so he's like connected and supposedly seen at the Carousel Club, is my understanding.
Well, that's interesting. He was a part-time bouncer at Austin's Barbecue, which is where the John Birch Society met. So he was definitely part of this milieu. And here's Roy Davis again. Roy Davis was a recruiter for the Klan. He was one of the top guys. He was like the Imperial Grand Dragon of the Klan in Texas. He was known, per John Collins, to place Klan members in Dallas law enforcement departments. Could this have been Tippit? It would play right into kind of where we are with everything that we're discussing now. So my thought is that his job was to kill Oswald. Something went awry. Maybe, he couldn't maybe locate Oswald. Was he the one beeping in front of the North Beckley rooming house, trying to attract his attention to get out of the rooming house and take him down? Tippit, what'd you do? You lost him. That kind of thing, right? Boom, he's shot. Now, he was shot outside the Abundant Life Temple Church. Okay.
Which no longer exists. I was trying to find it today, but they tore it down. You have a picture of it on your blog somewhere.
Yeah, it's on the Christian Identity the Vigilantes article.
But it's around this area. So it's southwest of Dealey Plaza.
Exactly. It's 10th and Crawford. And there's no accident that's so. There's a rumor, there's witnesses who say that the person who shot J.D. Tippit fled behind the Texaco station into the door of a church, the Abundant Life Temple. Was that church unlocked? Did this assailant know that this church was unlocked? Was there someone in the church who was going to unlock it? It's worth mentioning that this church is part of the Pentecostal Healing Revival movement. That's very important because both Roy E. Davis and Theodore R. Jackman were reverends in the supposed shooters, along with Tippit, were reverends in the healing Pentecostal kind of revivalist milieu. Also, it bears mention that so you have 2 murders so far. We have the murder of the president and we have the murder of J.D. Tippit. The murder of the president took place outside Texas School Book Depository. The company only moved into that facility, 411 Elm, a few months earlier. although it had the lease since early 62. So for a year and a half, right there, Christian Identity Vigilantes. It might have the Abundant Life Temple. It may not, but at least those are the shooters up there. By the way,
Wow, this is intense. Like
that's Roy E. Davis.
Wow.
That's Roy E. Davis right there, who we're talking about. That's Wesley Swift. But I just want to. That's William Potter Gale. I mean, he's got the Confederate flags. That's Edgar Eugene Bradley, another one of the preachers we were talking.
On the grassy knoll, right? So all this stuff.
Yeah,
and this is what
that's the Impeach Earl Warren sign. That's actually a copy of Ruby's own Polaroid. And that's the document I found from the newspaper below that, right below that says P.O. Box 71757, wanted for impeachment, Earl Warren, from Mrs. R. Davis of Dallas. So Mrs. Roy Davis of Dallas. Roy Davis was a scoundrel. He had a rap sheet. His wife there was 40 years younger than him, and he got into trouble because she was underage at first. And so he's a scumbag. But the Abundant Life Temple is interesting also too, William, because not only did the Texas School Book Depository Company move in a few months before the assassination, but O.B. Graham, the minister who ran the Abundant Life Temple, also moved into that church at 10th and Crawford just over a year before the assassination. He got rid of the building. He got out of the building in 64. He was done. The Garrison investigation tried to get into what was behind this church because they thought there was something there. They really were trying to figure out who the incorporators were. They thought the incorporators who went into the LLC basically with O.B. Graham were connected with Jack Ruby in some way. The Garrison people never really got any farther than that. However, I called the son of one of these incorporators who's still alive. The Rod Sherrill. Rod Sherrill told me something very interesting that nobody's figured out. He said that O.B. Graham was worked with a preacher named O.L. Jaggers. I thought that was very interesting. There's the Abundant Life Temple right there. The assailant supposedly ran into there. This is run by O.B. Graham, who's a healing revivalist Pentecostal preacher in the vein of R.E. Davis and others. He was also a Civil Air Patrol chaplain in South Carolina. O.B. Graham was. Okay. That's another thing nobody's figured out. But O.L. Jaggers and O.B. Graham were, by the way, I thought maybe O.B. Graham on the right may have been mistaken for Mac Wallace.
Same attire.
Yeah,
it's exactly. Like clones. Yeah,
exactly.
Wow.
So my point about the Abundant Life Temple is that I think it was planned as a safe house. If we're following Willie Somerset's clues, it was planned for a safe house because they're all these Pentecostal ministers, and this was a place to rendezvous.
It's a great cover. It's the best. The intelligence organizations have used Christian churches and Christian fronts forever, at least since post-war, World War II. It's the best way to do it. And there's like post things that happen, like some of these the kill list after Kennedy, like one of the guys who died, who was, I think, Oswald's roommate, said somebody in like a monk's garb was following him, So like this is really heavy duty intel stuff. And I think that it rings true. It has that ring of truth to me.
Yeah, a lot of pieces are falling together. I have to say, let's just talk about big picture here for a second, because this has been totally ignored, the right wing for the most part. I mean, Jeff Caulfield and others have put it out there to their credit. But what's the ramifications? If, say, the FBI had a pretty good sense now. They have a ton of material. Actually, if you scroll up to, exactly. That's why I mentioned that O.B. Graham was Civil Air Patrol, because of Ferry. And not only that, D.H. Byrd, who owned the Texas School Book Depository, was one of the co-founders of the Civil Air Patrol. So isn't it interesting that you have both murders on that day so far were outside buildings affiliated with Civil Air Patrol individuals?
Wow, which is, I think it's a known Gladio front. I think that it was founded by Nelson Rockefeller in the late 40s or early 50s. That was one of his projects.
Yeah. Richard DeSocio would be very proud of you right now.
Yeah, I think I remember that. And who else was also the other CAP member out of Baton Rouge, the coke dealer, who's buddies with Ferry, right? It's
Barry Seal.
Barry
Right.
Adler Seal. So
Yeah.
it's a crazy nexus. Yeah.
So, if you scroll down too, I think you'll find an FBI report. This is a different.
I'll go to a different. I can go to the back.
But if you go the new one I sent, the new one of the Christian Identity Vigilante.
Is it on the top
right
one?
there? Yep, right below there it is. So scroll down, you're going to see an FBI report, and this FBI report is talking about William Potter Gale, who right there. So William Potter Gale, this FBI thing says he's pretty certain that Gale was part of the 16th Street Baptist Church bombing of September 1963. Infamous bombing, you remember, killed the 4 little black girls. Spike Lee made a documentary about it. That's fascinating. William Potter Gale was supposedly part of that. And he was also part of a thing called the Awake Movement, the Army of White American Kingdom Evangelists. These are very terrifying right-wing milieu that I think did the FBI suppress on purpose because they knew that maybe this would just be an explosive, just powder keg for the country if they knew how deeply connected the right wing was to the killings of, again, not just JFK, but MLK and RFK. It's the same players,
right?
So what's the big picture? Well, we've talked a lot about this R.E. Davis, who was deep in the Klan. He was part of the guys who reactivated the Klan in 1915 on Stone Mountain. He was part of it. He was basically the mentor of this William Branham, who John Collins has written about.
Wow.
Another
That's
scoundrel.
amazing. Wow.
Branham's was basically the mentor of Jim Jones.
Right.
So you got Jim Jones.
Jonestown, Guyana. People
right?
cannot believe this. This is incredible stuff. Yeah.
Here's the problem with we've let it go so bad without addressing that this is, you think at least with me, you think Kennedy, you think it's in this solo, this isolation. It's not part of anything else. It was just like this out of mind experience, right? But actually, once you start looking into it, you find it's deeply entrenched in our country,
right.
As right,
in the culture,
culture, and not just the effects of it. I'm talking about the actual motivations that led to his shooting. For instance, he gives his civil rights speech in June of '63, and Medgar Evers is assassinated that night. Mississippi Burning is one of the greatest films I think ever made, but about the 1964 the civil rights workers who were killed in Mississippi, Bobby Kennedy.
I think that JFK in November 22nd, 62, he made a very important presidential directive as well. Kind of, I think it was deracializing something. I forgot what it was offhand, but. You know about that. It was something.
Yeah, well, no, I don't know that. But we know he's already federalizing, school enrollment. James Meredith and drawing the ire of George Wallace. I know we're all over the place, but I just want to tell you. I mean, I think if I could just say, by letting it go unfettered, we have given rise to not only Jim Jones of Jonestown, but also Tim McVeigh and Waco. And Jan 6,
Ridge, maybe
where we are today. Look at January 6th. I gotta say, I don't know, and I don't want to, ruffle feathers. I'm not entirely sure where you're coming down with it. But yes, it wasn't a Klan thing, but the 3%ers and the Proud Boys, they're the sequels to the Klan.
They're probably a different iteration. I don't know if there's as much white supremacy, but that would put them in the right wing for sure. But it's pretty incredible. I mean, the other thing is that I think that the whole JFK assassination has been shaped to not go into this, right? Maybe it's too delicate to make this like a white supremacist aspect. It's a lot easier to blame the CIA or intel agencies or just swap it out.
I'm sorry, but for very little evidence compared to the amount of rhetoric that was surrounding the right wing and all these back in the day, 40s, 50s, 60s, you had these political parties pop up. They would run a candidate, and then the America First Party of 1942, for instance. It was Gerald L.K. Smith. The Constitution Party, and that's how they would try to run these candidates. But my point is that we have so much of the rhetoric around wanting to basically overthrow the federal government because they thought it was like a UN thing, that the UN was really going to run it, that they were going to disarm, the nuclear capability was going to be disarmed. Kennedy was totally throwing the culture of the South to ruins by integration. I mean,
and all of these guys are Southerners, right? Too. I mean,
exactly.
Certainly Milt here.
Oh no, yeah, no, but no. I mean, look at the William Potter Gale cover. That he's got his two Confederate flags. Selected writings of William Potter Gale. I think it's up, but right there. So that's and it's all biblically based, sound theology that they'll fall back on, and so they think they have it right. And now the Klan had three groups in their crosshairs, obviously Blacks, but also Jews and Catholics. And so knowing that Kennedy was running in 60, I don't think you can't separate Kennedy's Catholicism from his assassination, in my opinion.
The first Catholic, right? The first Catholic.
Yeah.
So they think that he's more beholden to the Pope
than
to Americans or the Constitution or whatever.
Yeah.
So.
That was a typical Protestant thought at the time. And who's the Pope but a head of state? So in a way, I mean, they are making a point, where does his loyalty lie? And he really bent over backwards to try to assuage that electorate, that wasn't the case. It didn't matter. This thing ran so deep. He was also from the North, and, he was Irish, and, it just, and it's
not the way the country was run for 200 years. I mean, it's been a 200 year. I don't think those people were used to. It's hard to think back and get that mindset, maybe, but they had a different mindset. That's why the 60s was so vicious and bloody. It's like people who were used to their way. There were other kind of ideals, cultural ideas, really, that sent these people for a loop. Clearly,
yeah,
it's crazy,
right? So,
and it's amazing the attention to the connection to Amy Semple McPherson too here in LA is something else, because her story is really remarkable. But her church is still here. It's gone through different iterations, but like at its heyday, it was quite. I mean, it's something else. It's really almost like a temple. It really is a temple. It's the Angelus Temple is. What's the location? It's close to downtown, but they had a lot of money. It was you could see the power at one point, the luster of her organization.
Yeah. And that's where our second shooter comes in, Theodore Jackman. Theodore Jackman was an instructor at Amy Semple McPherson's church in LA. His student at the same time was Wesley Swift, who would later go on to found the Church of Jesus Christ Christian. An offshoot of which became the Aryan Nations. So
the Aryan Nations came out of that. So all this white identity, we're the master race, we're God's chosen. And wow, crazy, amazing.
And Wesley Swift was a rifle instructor for the Klan. There's Wesley Swift right there. He was Gerald L.K. Smith's bodyguard. I know we're throwing out a lot of names, but all of these names are connected. For instance, Gerald L.K. Smith was Huey Long's close associate. Let me put it this way, William. Huey Long was, before he became the rabble-rousing governor, he was a lawyer in northern Louisiana. One of the families he represented in 1925 was the Bannister family.
Wow, incredible.
That is incredible. So that tells me right there that there was an affiliation between Bannister and Huey Long's people. After Long was assassinated, Gerald L.K. Smith went up to Detroit, and he hung around with Henry Ford. Lest we forget Henry Ford, who was a promoter of the International Jew and the Protocols of the Elders of Zion. So you have this connection that's running deep, decades before Kennedy even shows up. So it's not like a particular, like Kennedy wanted to pull out of Vietnam. That's why we're going to assassinate him,
Right. It's interesting because the movie JFK, the biggest reference, glosses over this whole stuff. Like, maybe there's one or two references to like a shooter, but the places on the intel kind of thing. But
Yeah.
This whole right-wing element is there. It's incredible. And it overlaps Ferry to Bannister to Perez, right? There's things of Perez, this judge who's in Louisiana, just saying the most racist stuff. Incredible. Like totally shameless racism and separation of the races. And he's networked with all these guys.
That's right.
Huey Long and all that stuff.
Well, yes, Leander Perez, who is named by Willie Somerset as one of the financial backers of the assassination. It's very interesting. He was a Catholic who was excommunicated by the Roman Catholic Church with Delphine Roberts at the very same time.
Wow.
Well, only 3 Catholics in the archdiocese. Why were they excommunicated from the church? Because they opposed the archdiocese agreeing to the federal government to integrate Catholic schools.
Wow. So Delphine Roberts was Guy Bannister's paramour and worker. There's Bannister with the Masonic crossing,
The problem is Delphine Roberts liked to talk. She liked to talk. She liked to talk in op-eds, and she liked to talk in picket lines. And she was racist. And we have the letters to editors. And she was not only racist, but she was part of this white Aryan, we're the real Jews. Jesus is a white. And we must.
He's an Aryan, right? Yeah, he's an Aryan or whatever.
And so, that to me is the mindset that was probably going on in Bannister's office.
Right. I think you're right. And he's networked. So he's a Mason and I think an Order of Jesters, or he has all kinds of secret society. Also military intel, right? World War II. Like all these other guys, that's a real forging thing, is they're all in the war, they're all in World War II together.
And and he was
Clay Shaw.
Yeah. Bannister's also an FBI man, so he had a direct line to Hoover. Lest we forget. But he was also he was supposedly doing Klan recruitment in Mississippi in 1963, by the way. So and one of his clients in his private investigation firm was H.L. Hunt. So
Right.
it just
Texas is a Confederate state, right? It was in the Confederacy, so
absolutely.
slave state, the whole bit.
Again, it's not an accident that Kennedy was killed in Dallas in the South, where it was probably also plotted in Louisiana. The South,
right?
The Miami connection, where JFK was in Miami on November 18th. His motorcade was canceled because of Willie Somerset's information that he got from Joseph Miltier about the planned shoot from the building. So that was in the South. Joseph Miltier from Georgia, that's in the South. A lot of transplanters who were in Southern California came from, various like-minded places. Yeah, there's the recording.
This is like one of these elements that sometimes some JFK researchers go, Miltier had kind of inside information. He was prescient about the event. And then they drop it and they don't kind of see all these other guys, like you've done that research into all the connections. But it's just like Miltier must have known he's a white racist. And you don't really hear much more about the social connections between these guys. And they're deep and, they have resources. It's not just like some kook in a basement. I mean, these guys are networked. They're going to things that you said that there was some kind of meeting in New Orleans too before the killing, where all these guys are together.
Yeah.
When you see these meetups, those are like that's where things get talked about. That's where
Somerset was there and Miltier was there, and it was discussed at this meeting as the Constitution Party meeting. It was April of '63. It's right around the time Oswald supposedly took a shot at General Walker, which just feels staged. Totally feels staged to me. But I want to say there were multiple assassination plots hatched at this meeting from this Constitution Party meeting. There's Walker right there. Walker was part of this milieu too. And in fact, he could be the whole enchilada to the whole thing, some might think.
That's the military aspect. That's the military thing. Right. Like Lansdale and him and these characters all have that heart. Like this is an operation, and if things get in trouble, people are going to get shot. Like J.D. Tippett or so many people got shot. You mentioned Walter Craig. He died mysteriously. Roger Craig, sorry.
Yeah.
But he shot himself in the chest, supposedly, or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So, Bannister dies in June of 64. So what's the best way to send these guys out? Well, you got the paramilitary faction who know their guns and who, brother, we got you, we need you to do this.
They're angry. They feel like the country's changing. They're like strange love type people.
Right.
I mean, there's just,
7 days
that's what makes the most sense. It's not like there were 3 guys with rifles. It's hundreds, if not thousands of people with vast connections, all teaming up, not maybe working with a real top-down person. Maybe there's like 5 guys at the top, but making sure everything's covered. That's what makes the most sense.
Yeah.
It's really a vast conspiracy to me.
Well, yeah, because the ideology was similar. And these are people who wanted a civil war. These are people who still fought the South. The Civil War is called the War of Northern Aggression. It wasn't a Civil War, But
I've talked to people from the South, like real Southerners, and they've kind of gotten over it. I think that they're still, like, even to this day, this is almost 150 years later, they still feel embittered by what happened. Like, it's familial legacy. Like, they don't remember it with good, like, okay, that's done, let's wash our hands and move on. No, they don't think like that. So,
I wouldn't put it past these plotters to consciously draw on the shooting of Abraham Lincoln as a template. We always talk about, why aren't there so many weird connections between Kennedy and Lincoln and stuff like that? Well, maybe that was actually part of the plotting, because in a way this is trying to complete, or what Booth tried doing in a way. It's not too different.
I think you're right. It's a coup and a change in politics. So I think you're right. They probably were thinking about Lincoln and Julius Caesar, much like Garrison always draws that analogy between Caesar, the death of Caesar, and the death of JFK.
Right.
Like they had to do it. Once they made that decision, there was nothing could be left to chance. Like
exactly. Yeah. Brutus wasn't alone, and so there were at least multiple shooters, but like you're saying, that they didn't just show up and do it. So, and you had to know you had the backing of various factions to pull it off, that you would be safe. And Dallas was maybe one of the racist cities at the time in the U.S. But I want to just mention, just to close the book on this Constitution Party meeting in April of '63, there were multiple assassination plots hatched against prominent people in government and prominent American figures who weren't necessarily political. The president was not part of that. So I think, so that was a kind of separate thing, but we're pointing out that this was the mentality of this milieu. And another general, Pedro del Valle, asked for that list, and the list was given to, I think it was William Potter Gale, who then gave it to General Walker. So, again, it's just an example of this overwhelming information and evidence of just a violent mentality to disrupt. For instance, William, I always thought, why didn't that you could have just taken out a whole train of folks connected to government, from LBJ, Yarborough, Connolly, the mayor of Dallas, and other things. You could have had a bloodbath that day, a bloodbath. Jackie, it was a singular thing, which makes me think it was more of a statement than anything,
Yeah, I've heard that too. I've heard that, like, they wanted to make a statement, just that one guy, and cow everybody into submission. Like, we can do this to the president, and anybody else steps out of line, you're a goner,
Yeah. I mean, you think about Lincoln, we don't know what Reconstruction would look like. Probably would have been a little different if Andrew Johnson wasn't sitting there, a Tennessee senator who was, very sympathetic to the South. And basically everybody came back in who were the Southerners, and, nothing but a slap on the wrist. They were just kind of invited back. The same
enmity toward none, so to speak.
Exactly. And the same thing with Johnson. Johnson goes ahead and passes the Civil Rights Bill started by Kennedy. In doing so, he basically wrote away the Democratic, for the South, for the Democrats, for where we are today. Look, it's still red, So if he was part of that, why would he do such a thing, to to pass that. So, that to me is it almost exonerates Johnson in terms of actually being involved. Did he benefit? Yeah. I mean, of course he did. But, he also did things that wouldn't have. Also, I think a lot of the plotters, if we're going to follow like the bumper stickers of, was it Goldwater, right? Goldwater was probably supposed to be the guy, who was going to, be the right wing figure. And so, like they're driving around behind the grassy knoll there in the parking lot, they saw the Barry Goldwater bumper stickers from out of state plates. We never know what state they're referring to, who these guys were driving around, supposedly with a radio. So it's just another right wing example, because Goldwater was so right,
Right. Now they had somebody to take over in the wings. They probably knew that Johnson was ready to do it and take part in the cover up. If not, if he wasn't just involved or had foreknowledge of it or whatever.
Yeah. Like, I don't think necessarily there's different, they're covering their ass. I mean, I think the Secret Service, dropped the ball big time, right? And sure, they may have been involved. Dallas PD was certainly probably up to their eyeballs involved.
Yeah.
But the giveaway for me is when Hoover tells Johnson, we got to convince everybody that Oswald is the real assassin.
Right.
Not that I'm not saying that he sat there and plotted, but it just would make them look so bad.
Right. Whenever Hoover talks to people, there's always this subtext of like a sinister threat. Like, we are going to say we really need to have Oswald as the thing. Yeah. Right, Johnson? But they're friends too. Like, that's a known fact. They lived on the same street. Like, literally, they could go over and talk to somebody. And Edgar Hoover was a player, man. He was a really big player. There's no question. For decades, destroying people's careers and having leverage on people, all kinds of stuff. But yeah, it's an incredible story, and a lot of these figures are left out. You've done such great research. Where can people find your stuff? I know you've been doing a lot of work on this and other subjects. So.
Yeah, Medium would be great. I mean, just, what I kind of did was in the Medium article that you started, the Christian Identity Vigilantes, what I did was I did an article and embedded the video. So the article is actually just the video text, and the pictures I show are in the video. So I just my idea is to hit like-minded folks or people open to this, where I'm just kind of sharing my information and not making these great, the videos, but I just want the word to start, people's minds start opening up to beyond kind of what we're told by more prominent figures in the research community, that may be distracting us or taking us down the wrong road.
I think that they're still shaping the information to this day, and there's supposed to be this huge disclosure from Trump and this whole thing. I haven't seen it yet, but it'll be interesting to see what comes out. But yeah, I think people are still shaping the story, still leading people down cul-de-sacs. And I think that also people have their own biases when they look at this stuff. They really want to think of something else. And maybe some people don't want to acknowledge there's this really kind of dark, real right, hard right background, or cover it up or not emphasize some of the uglier things in American history.
That's right, because it gets right to the core of our problem, which was always been slavery and the race issue.
Slavery and race and all that stuff. Yeah. James, so your Medium is jamesfday at .medium.com, right?
That's right.
So people can check that out. I'll put links to the new documentary and some of our older shows and to your Medium. And is that the best place for people to reach out and talk to you if they want to?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, you can write to me directly. I welcome it because you have very intelligent viewers, so who always have good comments.
I like to think I have the most intelligent listeners. I mean, I don't have a huge audience, but these people, I get educated from my audience, honestly.
I bet
10 or 20% of my research comes from things. Hey, have you seen this? Have you followed? Because I sleep sometimes and I have kind of a personal life, so I'm not always online, but I've gotten some great leads, man. I've gotten great leads just by putting myself out there. So I really just appreciate your research, and I appreciate all the help of all the people out there. So I'm really grateful, because I'm not a JFK expert, but I've had some of the best on my show, Joseph McBride and some of these other characters. And recently this whole thing about the murder of Oswald, who had to die, he just, whoever that guy was, whether it was a double or what, I don't know. but that guy had to die by Jack Ruby or somebody. I don't know if he was fixed. Like, I think Martin Luther King, they made sure he was dead at the hospital. Like, he wasn't going to come out of that hospital alive. I think that's probably the same as Oswald.
I will just say, after Joseph Miltier heard about the death of Oswald, he said, per Somerset, well, that makes everything perfect now. The Jews killed Kennedy and the Jews killed Oswald. So now we have no worry, because in the Klan and his friends, the whole idea was that the assassination would be a Jewish conspiracy plot, which fits right into the whole like protocols of the Elders of Zion and everything.
And their whole worldview. Yeah, absolutely. All that stuff. James Day, check out his Medium and check out his new documentary. Thanks so much for your time.
Thanks, William.
Let's do it.